So we are getting started in about a minute. I just want to watch people gradually come in. If you're watching this live, thank you so much for being here. If you're catching this on the recording later on, thank you so much. This is a very necessary, urgent step towards eradicating anti-Yemeni sentiment in our community. So I'm gonna start because I promised starting on time. So my name is Rima Fadlallah. This event is in response to the racist incident at Bliss, but also in response to a longstanding issue that didn't start and probably won't end with that incident. This is a larger conversation that all of us need to be having, and we're so grateful for our panelists today who are gonna help us talk about next steps. That's really the main point here. And so I wanna go through our agenda briefly. For the first 20 minutes, we will talk about our mission for why we're doing this, and then we'll introduce our awesome panelists. From there, we're gonna address a couple community concerns and several anonymous submissions that we've received about anti-Yemeni sentiment in the community. And then we'll open up for panel Q&A. We will try as hard as we can to get to audience questions, live audience questions. We've received several questions already through our form, and so we probably will only have time to address those. But hopefully, again, this is the start of several conversations, and we'll get a chance to address those later on. And then last but not least, the last 15 minutes will be next steps in closing. So I just want to remind us of our mission. I think it's very easy when this conversation is happening to misappropriate it. This is meant to be a wake-up call. This is meant to be all of us reflecting honestly on these stories, the way that Yemenis are treated in this community on a daily basis. Please, please, please fight the urge to be defensive. This is not about one person. This is not about any one of us, really. It's not about a whole community. It's about the ways that this is happening to a community of people and the ways that a lot of us haven't really done anything to put an end to it, and even at times are perpetuating it. So please do not try to simplify or justify racist behaviors. This is one of many conversations and calls to action that are needed. I want to personally ask of our non-Yemeni audience several things. I know this sounds very easy to do, but it's really not. I need you to listen. And what that means is try to leave at the door anything that you're bringing, any defensiveness, any opinions of any members of this panel. Just please listen to these stories. I need you to decenter yourself. And what that means is, again, this is not about any of us. This is about how we can make this community better for a group of people who have been experiencing it in a very discriminatory way. Be honest. As you can see, we can't see any of you. We're not putting anyone on blast. You're sitting alone in your homes or in your room. You can be honest in that space when you're hearing these stories and recognizing that you've likely witnessed some of these. You've likely been there when some of these, you may have even said some of these things. And really, we can't get anywhere unless you're being honest about that. And then this is a personal ask for me. Please be brave. Like, this is not easy. My voice is shaking because this is a scary conversation to be having, but we really, really need our non-Yemeni audience to be brave and to be speaking out against this because we're least affected by it. You know, this is not something that affects us directly. And, you know, it really takes bravery on our parts to put it to an end. So without further ado, Shayma and I will be introducing our awesome panelists today.
First is all the panelists are on here, right? Because I don't see anybody, so I'm just doing this.
If you scroll down, okay. Like if you click on, it kind of shows you different options to view.
Okay, I got it.
Everybody is definitely here, which is great.
Okay, cool. So, firstly, I want to say thank you guys so much for doing this. I genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, thank every single one of you guys. This takes a lot, doing this. And again, I commend you guys all for having the courage to have this necessary conversation. So jumping into the panel, we have Maali Luqman. She is a candidate for the Dearborn Public School Board of Education. She is a fellow with the W.K. Kellogg Foundation and Center for Creative Leadership Community Leadership Network. It's a fellowship centered around children, community, leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion. She grew up in the South End community, attending Salina, Stout, then Etzel Ford. She graduated from the University of Michigan in 2008 before completing her master's in Harvard in 2018, mashallah. Maali is a regular engaged in our Dearborn community and is passionate about building bridges and healing divides. And then we have Miss Amira Sahidi. She graduated from the University of Michigan, Dearborn. She's certified with a secondary teacher with a BA in English and psychology. She has taught in Detroit, Michigan, Al-Hadda, Saudi Arabia, at an international school, and is currently a Dearborn public school teacher. She's earned a master's degree in school leadership with a focus on urban scholarship. Amira is also a loving mother of 2 beautiful boys and a passionate advocate for humanizing equitable schools for every child.
So I have the pleasure of introducing Mr. Ahmed. Mr. Ahmed immigrated to the US in 1979 to complete his education. He went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison before moving to Dearborn, where he attended Wayne County Community College to receive his associate's degree in design and construction. He later went on to complete that degree in design and construction and earned his bachelor's degree from Eastern Michigan, where he actually went to school with my father, Allah yarhamah. And Mr. Ahmed founded the Yemeni American Culture Center in 1991.
Yes.
Next, we have the beautiful Shayma, who I have had the pleasure to get to know throughout this whole process. Shayma is a 24-year-old woman studying to become a nurse. She has been involved with Yemeni organizations since she was 14 years old. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis when she was 19 years old and gastroparesis at 23 years old, which are 2 autoimmune diseases, both at a very young age. Shayma learned through each of these hardships how to be relatable and resilient in many aspects of life. And then we have Senan Saleh.
Mr. Simon Saleh is a former business owner at Simon Staffing Solution Incorporated. He earned an associate's degree in business from Henry Ford College in 2016, studied business at Wayne State University and Wayne County Community College. Mr. Saleh's career experiences includes working as a chairman of the Student Career Service Foundation and as an emergency room administrator for Beaumont Health.
And then last but certainly not least is Issa Ghaleb. Issa was born and raised in Dearborn, Michigan. He went through the Dearborn public school system, starting at McCullough Elementary, then Eunice Middle School, and finally graduating from Fortson High School. Issa currently attends Wayne State University, is pursuing a degree in kinesiology with the end goal of becoming a physical therapist. He is a youth activist who leads many groups and speaks throughout the southeastern region of Michigan. He is a competitive CrossFit athlete and spends a lot of time in the chalk buckets. With his free time, Issa likes to watch anime, try new restaurants, and adjust his fantasy lineup. Thank you all for being here. I know we can't hear everyone clapping right now, but I hope people are clapping for the panel in their own homes. And so I want to turn it around really quickly to each of you. In a couple minutes, can you just tell us in the same order that you see on the screen, what brings you to the panel tonight?
I guess does that make me go first or?
That's Maali first, no problem.
Oh, okay. Shayma, did you want to say something?
No, go ahead. I was just going to say if anybody feels free to shoot, and you just did it. So thank you, Maali.
Okay, yeah, I was just going by the order on the screen. So good evening to everyone. Again, thank you for having me on here. It's such an honor to be a part of this conversation. So the reason I decided to take part in this discussion is because, for one thing, I love Dearborn. I've been here my whole life. Alhamdulillah, yeah, I traveled, but I always came back home, right? And so I'm very passionate about making Dearborn the best Dearborn. And I really do believe that we are a unique city. We are the largest Arab and Muslim population outside of the Middle East across the globe, right? And I think that's really profound, especially in this day and age of like Islamophobia and anti-Arab, anti-immigrant sentiment. We're a really unique and diverse city. And I think that we don't really realize our potential as a city and how powerful and inspiring we can be. One of the things I noticed is when I did like travel for school and things of that sort, and I met other grad students, they, you know, when they found out I was from Dearborn, they were taken back like, what's up with Dearborn? Like, you guys are the largest population, but we expect so much more from you, right? And so that really got me to reflect about how I can come back home and make more of a positive difference. And so these conversations, I feel like, are so much needed and so fruitful, because we need to build bridges between, Lebanese, Yemeni, Iraqi, everyone here, right? And there's no denying there is anti-Yemeni sentiment across Dearborn, right? And so I really wanted to be part of the healthy conversation, because I know it's been kind of debatable whether we should even address the topic. Is talking about it going to actually make it worse? And so that's kind of why I wanted to be part of it.
Microphone is muted, Yani.
Mr. Ahmed.
Yes.
You're not muted, but if you want to go ahead right now, you can go ahead.
So thank you for organizing this webinar, starting this conversation. It's long overdue to open discussions, not to actually shame or blame or condemn or judge, but to open a discussion so that we can actually make some improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the best time, because it's not only among small group or subgroup, but it's all start taking international dimensions. I have been here in Dearborn since 1979, and I have seen a lot of different change, specifically the relationship between different communities and different groups. We're talking about, different ethnicity. Like, I have lived with a lot of Arab nationalities, Egyptian, Lebanese, and so on. Also, I have lived among the African Americans. When I came here, I actually went to Eastern Michigan University. I met a very fine young lady and we got married, and she was an African American. So what I was seeing at that time was really just mind-boggling, from how the people look at this, and it was really getting under my skins, even though I don't have this notion when I came from overseas. I look at people, as human beings, regardless of what their religious background or ethnicity or skin colors. And then we had a child. I named him Musawi because at that time was the peak of the Islamic Revolution in Iran. He went to Woodworth, and he was actually bullied so badly by different students, but I know at that time the majority was from Lebanese background. Majority of the students, white and Lebanese background. There were few Yemenis that time. We're talking about 1997, 98. So the saddest thing was he was being bullied and harassed. And in the last day of school, in June 16, I remember, he was basically threatened by a group of students, and he took a knife with him. And he hid the knife in the bathroom above the drop ceiling tile. So the police was called, and one of the teachers or somebody in the hallway, and they handcuffed him and they took him down to the juveniles. And it was a big issue. That was the turning point in his life. He went through a lot of identity crisis, and it was, to me, it was just a nightmare for years and years. So I am sharing this personal experience to basically hoping that this type of activities and this type of behavior will not continue and harm more people.
Mm.
We really need to start tackling this issue by starting from the family. kids learn behavior from their parents, from their social circles, and also from the social media. But we can always make corrections when the kids start talking about other people negatively. We can correct them, and we can teach them, a better belief and value system. And we as a Muslims, we're supposed not to discriminate against anybody, because discrimination is a satanic behavior. Because Satan, when he was asked to bow for Adam, he said no, he would not bow, because Adam was made of a clay and he was made of fire. So it's just so necessary that we start this discussion and start making these corrections and helping young people to develop, the tolerance and the live and let other people live. I don't mean by that we do not practice our our cultures or anything like that, but also we have to respect other people and make sure we treat them with respect. Imam Ali said there are two types of people: either your brothers in humanity or your brothers in faith. So I'm not really sure why things has gotten to this point, and this is the incident has been the tip of the iceberg. So I'm willing to work with whoever. This was things that I noticed right when I came here to the United States, and I met with a lot of clergies and community activists. And every time I try to mention this or talk about, we should start building bridges with the different communities or different groups in the community, and they will just, just sweep it under the rugs. So I'm so glad that you guys taking this upon you and putting all this effort and starting this dialogue. Hopefully something good will come out of it. And I'm so grateful that you give me the opportunity to share with you my personal experience.
We're so grateful for you, all of us. Thank you,
Mr. Ahmed, for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate you sharing. It's really good to hear stories like this, because it makes us appreciate what we're going through, because sometimes it's harder for others than we expect.
Yeah. And I would like to mention, as we're going throughout all of the panelists and you are familiarizing yourselves with the panelists, please keep in mind that we do range from all different types of ages. So this is definitely something that has been going on for decades. So it's not just something that, people in their 20s are experiencing. This has been going on for, like Mr. Ahmed said, he's been experiencing it since the early 90s.
Absolutely. Amira, I know we skipped over you. If you want to share your reason for being here.
You didn't skip over me. Abdul Galil took his proper place. Alhamdulillah, that was a great thing to hear. We need to, respect our elders and hear their stories. We're standing on the shoulders of giants. Arabs and Muslims have been here in Dearborn since 1920s, I believe, is first documentation, at least in Detroit. So just to keep it short and quick, I grew up in Dearborn, born and raised, going to Lori, then Fortson, and we heard yum-yums. A lot of these jokes, and I have to say that some of my absolute best friends are Lebanese, and they were terrified that we were going to put them on blast. But, I have some of the most fondest memories of just growing up, not really, any divisive language like that, but it happened, it occurred, I didn't have language for it. Fast forward last year, I had a Yemeni student, we were talking about racism, it was a lesson on Colin Kaepernick, and the Yemeni student raised his hand and said, but Miss Saidi, white people are better than us. So it's not necessarily referencing Lebanese, but it's just this idea of a colonization of the mind. And it made me stop dead in my tracks, and I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, they speak better English, they make more money, and they have bigger homes. And you can sit there and unpack as an adult why this student felt this way, but it showed to me that there's some internalized hate that is really infiltrating every system, every habitat that we're living in, and it's hurting our youth. And that's why I'm involved. As a teacher, this is so important for me that this stops now. And it is not, this is not a way to instigate hate. It's a way to solve the problem. We got to bring it out to the air so that we can actually deal with the situation. Thank you.
Jumping over, Senan, do you want to talk or do I go next? Because I'm just blown away by Amira, you guys. I love her so much.
Yeah, I don't mind. I mean, if whatever you like.
Go ahead.
Sure. First of all, I want to thank you guys for inviting me to this webinar podcast. I believe it's truly important to raise awareness when it comes to racial discrimination, especially here in our city. I'm not just here for Yemeni people, I'm here for all color people. I'm here today to encourage our educational and workforce systems to take this matter seriously. I've been a victim myself in discriminations in the past, and the only way I was able to overcome it was by standing up for myself. And that's why I want to encourage everybody, if you are going through some experience, just like what happened, recently somebody said, hey, this is what happened, and they stood up for themselves and everybody came out and supported them. So if you are going through something like this, I do encourage you to come out. We will come, we will support you. But at the same time, I don't want you guys to think, I don't want anybody to twist the idea and think that I'm going against anybody. But the main goal is hopefully this, become a better reform or a change for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Issa.
What's up, guys? Assalamu alaikum. My name is Issa. Like Rima when she introduced me, I grew up here in Michigan, born and raised. I love Dearborn, Michigan. I've had the honor of studying. It's funny, I actually studied Arabic in Texas, right? To get a different perspective, but nothing hits home. Nothing's like Dearborn, Michigan. I know tons of people who have all the money in the world, yet choose to live in East Dearborn. They choose to live on Warren and Schaefer because there is nothing like Dearborn, Michigan, right? That being said, my best friends, some of my closest friends ever, as Amira said, are Lebanese, are from the Lebanese community, right? I went to Eunice, I went to McCullough Elementary, went to Eunice Middle School, and then eventually I went to Fortson, go Tractors, and that's where I wrestled and I played football. And for many people who knew me in the community, wrestling was such a big part of my life, right? And the reason why I say that is that there's a group of men that absolutely changed my life. They are the greatest men I've ever met in my life, and they're Lebanese, right? Jeff Ball, Jason Ball, Aboudi Beidoun, Simba Beidoun, you guys all know who you are. And without these men, I would not be the man I am today. And they were from the Lebanese community. So to say that, it's even crazy to say all are Arab, Lebanese, Iraq, whatever you are, to say they're all racist towards the Yemeni community is absolutely false. Absolutely, it's not true. However, there's always that pool of people, that we do get the hateful and the messed up comments or remarks, if you will. I once read a tweet that said, in regards of what's going on with the BLM movement, and we can use that same mentality here. I believe the tweet was not all cops are bad cops. There are some good ones. But what the argument was is we need everyone to be a good cop. So why I bring this up is we need everyone to not be racist. I know it's a lot easier said than done, but like Mr. Ahmed said, Allah Harlah, he said, Imam Ali radiallahu anh said there's two types of people in this world. Those of faith are two types of brothers and also sisters, right? Those of faith and those of humanity, right? I don't care who you are. If you're black, blue, white, if you're a cereal box, listen, we all call Earth home. We're all home. So at the end of the day, slap hands, air high five. If you wear the hijab, I'll give you the little salam. At the end of the day, we all call this home. So that's all I'm here for. Just to truly share my story, some of the racist remarks we got, but kind of with going on, biting off or adding to what Senan said about embracing and standing up for yourself. A quick little story I have growing up is I was in the fourth grade. I truly want to say I was probably the only Yemeni at McCullough Elementary, or at the time of what I remember. Now, alhamdulillah, we see a lot of mix, right? I remember there was a little chime or a little song that
Yep, I know what you're gonna
the
say.
Yemenis or the Lebanese community used to address me, and you say to me, and it used to hurt at the time. It was, "I am a Yemeni. The shower is my enemy. If you want to be my friend, then please don't smell me." And meaning that the Yemeni community always had the dirty look, or we were always looked down upon, right? And at the time, you can imagine maybe an 8, 9, 10-year-old kind of feeling like, wow, it's kind of messed up, right? And at that age, it was very, very tough for me to like be proud of who I was, right? I think when I was 16 or 17, that's when I built the internal confidence. But at that time, some of my family members will know is I have the lighter features in the family, and I mean I have like the light eyes, I have the lighter hair. So I always got is, oh, you don't look Yemeni. So I used that to my advantage. I remember the 3rd, 4th grade, I told everyone I was Lebanese, right? If I could go back to the 8-year-old Issa, I would hold the Yemen flag across my chest, right?
Yeah.
And kind of what Senan was saying is that's how I truly learned how to like defend myself, and like truly like the way I learned to defend myself was accepting and loving who I was. And that's such a cliche right there, right? It's very, very cliche, but hey, there's absolutely nothing wrong with cliches, because that's very, very important. Is just understanding the culture you come from, appreciate it. You don't get to choose the culture you enter. You don't get to choose your tradition. I never chose to be Yemeni. I got blessed, but when I was born into it, and alhamdulillah, I'll accept it, and I'll write Yemen across my chest until I die, and that's my story. That's my little introduction. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much, Issa. Shayma, your turn.
Real quick, I kind of am, I don't want to say that I'm the one that like brought this out, but I'm the one that said that this was enough. And I kind of internalized some of the things that were going on with like the BLM movement and some of the stuff that I hold dear to my heart. And I was like, this is something that has been going on for generations. And I know this because I also went to McCullough Eunice, and I also had these experiences happen to me. So for somebody to tell me that, no, these things didn't happen, like I kind of felt like, how does that make sense? How are you going to tell me something happened to me? So that's when I was just like, enough is enough. It's time we need to start talking about this. So I just wanted to be part of the movement. I wanted to be a part of the change. I'm here for a better Dearborn. I ultimately want to start a family and have children live in the city. And I don't want to do that knowing that these conversations didn't happen. So this is for better. This is for change, inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you all so, so much for that, and for your stories, and for your vulnerability, and for your time. You shouldn't have to be here. And I do want to say that. I want to make that a point for everybody listening. These people shouldn't have to be here living through and seeing stories of discrimination and sharing their own. And they're gracing us with their time. A lot of them have work, a lot of them have school, some of them have families, and they're spending their time solving this issue that should have been solved and shouldn't have been an issue to begin with. Before we get into the conversation, I want to address a commonly held sentiment, at least the commonly held sentiment that I've been hearing, either in personal conversations with me, in the comments section, in the DMs. I pulled this specific testimonial from our RSVP form, and someone shared this story. I want to read it out loud. I'm a proud Lebanese American born in Dearborn, whose origin is from the Middle East. I appreciate the humble, patient, and caring Yemeni community, and I know that many from the Lebanese community feel the same. This incident, which I'm sure there are more like it, should not divide what our community has built for 30 to 40 years. Nonetheless, regrettable things were said to you or about you, and it's unfortunate. However, racism is real, and it's within and against our own as well. Inshallah, the good, the God-fearing, and the loving will prevail, and we will unite stronger after this. And so again, I bring this up because I think, Amira, you and I were talking about this a little before organizing this, and just the sentiment that I think a lot of Lebanese and maybe non-Yemeni people have around this event maybe dividing the community somehow, or the idea that we can minimize racist events when they happen. And so I do really want to open the floor to you to address that as well.
Yeah, so Rima, you know, I've been organizing within education since I started as a teacher, and I will say that even within schools, this like code of civility, right? Like for all, keep the peace. It's really a way to silence anyone dissenting, and it's a coded language to humiliate somebody into silence. And you know, as Arabs, and all of us who grew up with parents, whenever your mom used to say, if you ask her, you could go somewhere and she says, inshallah, you know, that basically means no, right? So it's like kind of tabling something. So when I read like inshallah, like in here, and of course we all, you know, everything inshallah means, you know, with the like as God wills it, and we all, as people of faith, we believe that Allah is for good and will support good as long as we act for good. And you know, the Rasul said, if you see an injustice, you change it. And Issa, please check me here, but I think it was, the order was, you can change it with your hand, your mouth, and your heart. Is that the right order?
Heart, hand, mouth. You got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and the strongest is you change it with your hand, right? Like you do about it. And so that's us like bringing it to the surface. You can't deal with the problem if you're not bringing it to the surface. And it might cause divisiveness, but honestly, when I read this, I immediately thought of Zora Neale Hurston's quote: "If you are silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it."
Mm-hmm.
So you have to bring your pain to the surface. And some of us don't even know we grew up with this trauma. We didn't have language for it. It wasn't discussed. But I'm really thankful for the Black Lives Matter movement, because it's really brought to surface all of our traumas as minorities in the US. And in Dearborn, we're a minority majority, right? We make amongst all the Arabs, the African Americans, Latinos, we make up about 60% of the city's population, and yet we're infighting. So we can't really collectively do anything. So that's why I think this work is really important to bring to the surface. Stop with the defensive, like this is divisive, this is not civil, we can do this. No, cut it out, let's air it out, and let's deal with it as openly and honestly as we can.
Right, because just to like reiterate, like what Amira, like I love the fact that you're saying this so, like it's you can't take away what happened to me, and I feel like people are saying, no, this didn't happen, no, this didn't happen to you, and it's like, yes, it did happen to me. I got that song that I said, Yemeni, the shower is your enemy, you know, like those were chants thrown at me as well. So I didn't appreciate how people were telling me this didn't happen. This is not something that exists in Dearborn, and just to like belittle that. So I'm definitely gonna need that quote from you.
Thank you both so much. Senan, I saw you came off mute. Did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was going to say about what you just said. You know, on a positive note, you know, 40 years ago, older generation people, you know, Yemeni people, they looked up to Lebanese people. Over the years, you know, we saw as Yemeni people how successful Lebanese people came in, especially when it came to business, owning real estate, graduating school, and it encouraged us as Yemenis to do the same. And I do have a lot of, you know, Lebanese who are co-workers, neighbors, and mentors that I look up to, whether, you know, I'm doing business or real estate. So it's not like, I don't want, you know, people to think Lebanese people are bad, just like everybody was saying. I think everybody in the panel just said, you know, it's just a few people that did. So I just want to make sure, you know, we do let everybody know that we're not attacking all Lebanese people. We're not saying, you know, they're racist or negative or anything like that. We do have friends who are Lebanese, and we look up to them. And that's what made me successful in what I do. And today, our new generation, especially of Yemenis, has changed. We have Yemenis who are millionaires, doctors, pharmacists, schools, teachers, lawyers, business owners, and politicians. And hopefully by the end of November, we are going to get our first Yemeni to the state assembly, Abe Ayash. Everybody knows who I'm talking about. And hopefully in the next 2 or 4 years, I'm going to be running again for Congress. And we'll see how it goes. So that's it.
So I want to I want to, in that same vein of just speaking through some of the things that we've been hearing, I really want to equip our audience. I know a lot of you have been having this difficult conversation. I know a lot of you have been defending our whole community because, again, this is a community issue. And I just want to go through some of the most common bullying tactics that I've been seeing. And I want to give you all assurance that a lot of these tactics are based in zero logic and you should really pay them no mind. And I'm going to go through each one by one. So the first is that we're dividing our community by holding forums like this against racism and anti-Yemeni sentiment. The existence of racism and anti-Yemeni sentiment speaks to the fact that a divide existed well before this event. The fact that this event is pointing it out is actually a step in changing and healing that divide. So this is what we call a straw man fallacy. I don't expect you to know this. I had to relook it up, but I took a Logic 101 class in college and I really liked it. And so I decided to kind of have a fun game of matching the fallacy to the comments that we hear. A straw man fallacy is when you take someone's argument, you pretend that they're saying that they're doing something else, and then you attack that. And so in this case, our argument, as this event is titled, is standing with our Yemeni community. Not dividing the community, not yelling at Lebanese people. That's not any of the language around this. And people using this event and accusing us of dividing the community is a fallacy. It's based out of zero logic, and you should pay those arguments no mind. The next one is very ridiculous. Yemenis who speak out against discrimination and or colorism must be anti-Shia. Now I want to stop here because I'm Muslim, I'm Shia. I do not want to minimize anti-Shia sentiment, and I don't want to pretend it doesn't exist. But I do want to say that in these conversations, it really doesn't exist, and it's very ridiculous for us to be accusing people of being anti-Shia and personally attacking them. That's what an ad hominem attack is, when they're speaking out in favor of their own self-respect and dignity, and arguably in favor of all of our self-respect and dignity. So when people come at you with this kind of claim, just ignore it because it's a logical fallacy. And then last but not least, we should not talk about these petty incidents because there are more important tragedies to discuss. Very important tragedies, which do include famine in Yemen, Beirut's blast, Palestinian illegal occupation. I think everybody on this panel can agree that these are very important conversations. However, this is an example of a logical fallacy called a red herring. Mm-hmm. It's when you try to talk about something and they distract you with another thing and they try to shame you, make you lose your argument or make you think you're losing your argument by distracting you with a point that we can all agree on. We can all agree that these issues are important. We can also all agree that we can do both. We can, talk about all of these issues and raise money for them. A lot of us have, while also fighting for our own basic human rights in America. Right. So I don't know if anyone has anything to add, but feel free.
I'm gonna add a few things if you don't mind. So for the one that I really, really want to talk about is the anti-Shia thing, right? So something that like the Sunni Shia thing is bigger than any one of us, right? So I always tell this to like some of my my closest friends, just to like kind of shut this like you said, Rima, to shut this one out is that you're gonna have people are gonna have their certain opinions they believe, and I'm gonna have mine, okay? But that's no reason for any hate. We can agree to disagree because within our own sects of Islam or religion, we also have our own differences. Like speaking on the Sunni world, we have different schools of thoughts that we have our minor differences. You know what I do? I'm gonna shake your hand and I'm gonna say, Taqabbalallah. May Allah accept from you. You know what I mean? Now to move on. At the end of the day, like we mentioned earlier, we all call this home. And that's all I'm gonna say to that one is agree to disagree and let's move on. You know what I mean? It's we at the end of the day, we're doing what we believe is best, and we're gonna move on with that. And then I know someone is trying to kind of looking at one of the questions someone asked about. I know, sorry, this one's been irking me. Not really.
Can we wait for questions till later?
Yeah, no problem.
I'm sorry, I just don't want to take questions until we take the ones that have been submitted.
No.
But we'll take. Thank you. Okay, so before we get into questions, we want to go over some of the anonymous submissions that we've received. So quick synopsis on this. We opened the floor for anonymous submissions. Within days, we received almost 150 anonymous submissions from our Yemeni community about anti-Yemeni sentiment in Dearborn. The themes are anything from bullying to workplace discrimination to educational inequity. You can read the slide. I want to make a point to know that this is not just people talking about being bullied. And if it was, it would still be worth a panel. However, this is people who are talking about their inequities in spaces like education. This is a public health issue. This has affected people's health. This is a local government and humanitarian issue. And so before we get into the anonymous submissions, I want to put us all in the frame of mind of understanding that this is a call to action. These aren't just stories. This is a call to action for our elected officials, for our school board, our school leaders, our media outlets, and for each and every one of us. I'm gonna share a quote by one of my favorite people, my father, because I think it will be way better received from him. And he talked about educational inequity, and that's my background. I was formerly an educator. And he said that in his words, don't come at me because I didn't say it. If you're colorblind, you're stupid, which means that if you are not addressing people's ethnicity, their race, their background, their experiences, as an educator, as a person, anyone who serves our community, you're missing out on their story. And if you don't know their stories, how can you address the needs? And so I really want to ask us tonight, please do not close your eyes and pretend that these stories that you read aren't real. Please do not minimize them. Please do not pretend that they don't exist, because that is literally the only way that we can do something about them and start addressing the needs that our community is expressing to us. So we're gonna go through these fairly quickly. Shayma and I are gonna switch off. This one is a call to action for our school board and school leaders. Growing up and going to a mainly Lebanese dominated school at a young age, I was discriminated against. Statements like Yemenis smell, Yemenis are ugly, don't play with her, she's Yemeni. Why do you dress like that? I'm whiter than you. I kid you not, this is what I heard growing up. And the words stuck with me for years. I swear at one point I was so ashamed of being Yemeni and never wanted to tell anyone that I was. I'm so upset I ever felt that way about not being proud of who I am. I honestly just want to walk the streets of Dearborn with confidence and comfort. I hate having the mindset in the back of my mind, like, what if they say something rude and embarrass me? What if? This isn't how it should be. I really hope this incident changes the Dearborn community for the better.
Fortson High School, 10th grade, 2014, ELA class. Our Lebanese teacher, who was a very cool guy, always had a Yemeni joke to tell. Oh my God. Wow. Not gonna, I recognize who this was. Not gonna say his name. I know a lot of people know who he was without me naming him. This is great. Funny thing was, we were reading To Kill a Mockingbird in the class, and we all know that book is about racism and prejudice. He would always say something about Yemenis, turn it into a joke. Then he'd end that joke with, I love my Yemenis. Matter of fact, I taught in Etzel Ford High School a few years back, and I had a great influence on the Yemenis there. If it wasn't for me, they would have never graduated. They would all be failures. We wouldn't say anything back because it was a normal thing to hear something about Yemenis on a daily basis.
So a call to action for local businesses and city council. This year at Fortson, my sister told me they had a similar discussion about Yemenis and Lebanese tension. And a Lebanese girl openly said in class, yeah, straight up, my dad never hires Yemenis, like ever. Things of this nature where it affects basic human rights to work is why this issue is very important. It's more than not booking Yemenis to get laser.
A call to action for our school board and school leaders. In high school, I thought I had dyslexia. I went to my counselor to tell her. She literally laughed and said, who told you about that? She never recommended any advanced classes to me. I always had to fight for honors and AP classes. I was a straight A student. I did well. However, I was quiet and I wore an abaya. That says something at Fortson. My list can go on, but that specific experience really affected me. I will never forget her laugh.
This is a call to action for all of us. And honestly, this one I think is gonna reveal what a lot of us truly think in our minds. And here's the part where we gotta be honest with ourselves in our own homes. No one's calling you out. Me and this Lebanese guy had a college class together years ago, and he was a cool, nice guy. I don't know exactly what we were talking about that day, but then he tells me, starting from the bottom to the top, listing with his hands, come on, don't be mad or anything, but come on, it's Yemenis, Iraqis, Palestinians, and then Lebanese.
A call to action for our local businesses and city council. I got my first job at 16 and was automatically told by my coworkers to not tell the manager that I'm Yemeni because they don't last here.
A call to action for our elected officials. After the Bliss incident and the Yemeni outrage about it, my Lebanese boss told me that my Yemeni community is blowing this Bliss thing out of proportion and that we shouldn't because racism is everywhere. That's another logical fallacy. It's called a red herring. And not just the Lebanese community. He then sent me a screenshot of the resolution aid for Yemen that was introduced by Abdullah Hammoud, who's Lebanese, and jokingly, but not really, said, you, as in Yemenis, should remember this and be grateful. I responded, I love Abdullah Hammoud. He's doing his job. He is doing what we are paying him to do for us. He got the overwhelming majority of Yemeni votes in Dearborn, and we expect him to do what's in our best interest. He's not doing Yemenis a favor. He's doing his job.
A call to action for our local businesses. I worked at a local salon where discrimination was in plain sight. Guests would come in to book for their parties, yet the only ones who had to pay a deposit were Yemeni people. The owner would sit and talk to me knowing I'm Yemenia as well, and just bash our people on how bad they smelled, made a remark saying, I don't know how their husbands sleep with them smelling like that. She also let me go for no reason at all.
So that was the last of the ones that we chose to showcase. We'll continue to post these on the Dearborn Girl page. We've been posting them. These are just different areas of discrimination that the community has been facing. And again, these are about 6 or 7 out of 150 submissions like them. And where one of these stories comes, there's 100 more like it, I'm sure, that we don't know about. And just keep that in mind, please. Please keep that in mind moving forward. So we're gonna move into our Q&A. We're first gonna go through the Q&A that we took from the forums. And so I'm gonna start with this first question. How can we teach our Yemeni youth and young adults to be proud of their culture despite the negativity they receive from non-Yemeni Arab? I have had so many experiences of young Yemenis pretending to not like Yemeni food, music, clothing, and even claim to not understand the Yemeni dialect. All of this, I believe, is secondary to their surroundings and trying to dissociate from being authentically Yemeni. So Issa, I know you and I talked about this a little bit, and you spoke to some of your experience. I'd love for you to take the lead on this one.
I kind of mentioned it a little bit earlier, is, you know, embracing who you are, truly understanding that, like, listen, we didn't get to choose to be Yemeni. Like I said, you know, we were blessed, right? I know that many of our followers or there might be some here that are not Muslim, but in that case, I was telling this to Rima, like, here's a little tangent, is that, believe it or not, majority or Arabs come from a tribe called Beni Jurhum, and Beni Jurhum is a tribe that originated in Yemen, right? So if we look we're diving in deep, we're going way back. A lot of us come from the area that is now known as Yemen, right? So the reason why I bring this up is just learning that, you know, just understanding your culture, right? Growing up, I always had people come up to me and say, hey, you eat al-Saidi with your hands, and they used to always be like, how many fingers? And I would say 2 fingers. Let me get down and show you. You know what I mean? Understanding that there's beauty in that culture, right? And beauty in sitting on the floor and eating with your family. Mm-hmm. Some of the experience that I had growing up too, of being, or even not only myself, but even coaching wrestlers, and I see some of this is that there's so many to like unravel here. Just the biggest thing I want to say here is just truly understanding and just accepting who you are, right? Like I said, you don't get to choose. We didn't choose to be Yemeni. We didn't choose to be a part of this culture. But what we do choose is how we treat. I'm speaking on behalf of the non-Yemeni community now. Is what you do choose to do is you choose how you look at them, right? The end goal for me, what I would like to see in the future is that whole thing of, oh, he's Yemeni, oh, she's Yemeni, oh, that shouldn't exist, right? That's something I mean, it's gonna exist, it's going to exist, right? But it shouldn't have a negative connotation to say, oh, he's Yemeni, oh, she's Yemeni, or whatever the case may be. That should not have a negative connotation. I probably did not answer that question at all, but
No,
that's something that I wanted to kind of like chime in on what I experienced and how I eventually dealt with that. And just, understanding and loving who you are.
I think to like go off of what you said, Issa, when we were in school, like we knew the Yemeni families or the Yemeni people at our school, and we went to McCullough and Eunice. We knew them, and they were just a selected few. Now, being Yemeni in Dearborn, you are not the minority anymore. This is something that we have. You're not alone. And I think just knowing that you're not alone, or knowing that there are more of us around, brings more of like a comfortable setting to it as well. So just knowing that there's more people that are willing to talk about it, there are more people that come out and that are very proud, yet the Yemeni community are very proud of them. There more and more people are coming out and they're showing, hey, I'm Yemeni and I'm proud. And that just takes bravery. And I don't want to take away from that either. Like, you have to be really brave in order to accept something that not everybody accepts. And I know growing up, I didn't claim that I was Yemeni. I used to tell people I was half, just so I didn't get bullied. And that's how I got away with it. I used to literally tell people that I was half whatever, just so I got away with not dealing with that for that specific year. And then I would worry about the next thing to say for the next year. And so being just actually having the self-courage goes a long way.
I definitely agree. And I do want to add, now that I'm looking at this post again, there's something that's being mentioned about not understanding the Yemeni dialect. Mr. Ahmed, Senan, Amira, Maali, Shayma, like a lot of these people are better Arabic speakers than I am. The Yemeni dialect is the closest thing to Fusha, right? I get that, we are the way that the Yemenis pronounce their Arabi in case can be very, very strong. Like, we don't say alam, we say qalam, right? The qaf is a strong letter, but that's a proper way to say that, right? So I mean, and like with Rima saying when we were talking about it earlier, is that the Lebanese that or Bilad al-Sham, I'll say that area, so like Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, they've in a sense, it kind of got, like Rima was saying, and Rima, correct me if I'm wrong here, but we were talking about how like the French colonized these areas, right? And they added their own twists, which is that's beautiful. It's actually pretty cool. It's kind of cool. But a lot of times, people say, like, what are you guys saying? Like, why are you guys speaking so like tough and so strong? I don't understand the Yemeni dialect.
Yeah.
I think the way to look at it is, it's not that you don't understand the Yemeni dialect, is you don't understand, you have a lack of understanding in Fusha, in the proper Arabic, right?
And we talked about that a lot, me and you, Rima. Like at the beginning of this journey, we talked about the actual, like we got into the discussion with how it gets broken down with Arabic and stuff like that.
Yeah, I can share something. So a lot of us in Dearborn, and I don't know if it's most, but we're from Junub, from the south of Lebanon. And growing up, my father was very proud to be from the Junub. And there's a lot of slang that goes along with the Junub, even in the Lebanese dialect itself. And he would be sure to teach us ene instead of ana, or there's just like little technicalities that you can tell if someone is from the Junub. And in Lebanon, we're seen as the lower class people. And so a lot of my other family or other Lebanese people would change their dialect to get rid of that Junubiya accent and apply like the more Beirute proper English. And it's just the same example of what language politics looks like, and trying to deem certain people as less than based on the way that they speak. And then we come here and do the same thing to other communities, to the Iraqi community, to the Yemeni community, and try to normalize what is normal Arabic and what's not. And growing up, there was a lot of that, making fun of the way Yemenis speak. And it took for me to reflect on, you know, the ways that my family even experienced those language politics, to realize like, okay, there's a dominant culture that is saying something is normal, and we experienced it negatively back home in Lebanon, and we're recreating that same oppressive dynamic here. Obviously it's different, where we're trying to tell a group of people the way that they speak is abnormal or weird.
I wanted to just jump in on that before you moved on to the next slide. Did you want to go ahead and say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna add on to what Rima said about like her father. Allah yarhamah. I know growing up is like my dad, and Shayma can testify to this as well, is my dad is a grammar freak. So if I walked in and I think yesterday I said something to him and he just looked at me like I was crazy. It's the little like ena versus any or nt versus enta that just drives it used to that was just his thing. It drove him nuts, and he always like was tough on us growing up. So, you know, kind of like going back to what I was saying originally, is that a lot of times is that, you know, like if we just take time and look at the history, Yemenis do have the Fusha. The last thing I want to say about the slide is it says some people don't like Yemeni food. I know, I mean, I get it, you know, like that's such a ridiculous statement in a sense, because one of my best friends is Lebanese and he doesn't like bamia. Like, who likes bamia, right? There's a lot to it. Or like, there's just, of course you're not gonna like everything, bro. Like, of course it's not like, I don't like tilapia and I'm whatever. Like, I live in America, you know what I mean? There's just this thing, just to like.
You love tilapia.
The fact that like that's even a thing, I kind of find it ridiculous, because like no one likes every food, and there of course you're gonna have certain things of the culture that, you know, you're personally not a fan, which is fine, you know, like, which is fine. It shouldn't be a thing that's definitely like separates a community, if you will. That's all I have to say on that slide.
So I wanted to add on to that before you move on to the next slide. So a couple of things, what your father, like Hama, said, Rima, about pretty much recognizing diversity, and that's an important part of moving forward. So we don't want to, you know, like say, oh yeah, we're all one, Lebanese and Yemenis, and even within that, we're all one in the sense of like brotherhood, sisterhood, but at the same time, we have to embrace and appreciate that there is diversity, and it's beautiful, it's not a bad thing. Even within the Yemeni community, and like you mentioned, the Lebanese community, there's so much diversity. So like, I'm from South Yemen, from Aden. My dialect is significantly different than like my best friend who's from Badan, right, a different part of Yemen. The foods we're closer geographically to the beaches in Aden, so we eat a lot of seafood, we eat a lot of like biryani-like foods. We don't make asid, we don't make sabaya. I love those things. I go to my friend's house to eat them, but my family doesn't make them. We don't eat them. Our dialect is different. The way we dress is different. But at the same time, within just the country, there's so much diversity, but you have to just embrace and appreciate it. And if you really know your history, you'll understand why there's diversity. And it goes back to colonialism, right? So like, you guys had mentioned earlier that like the French had, you know, occupied or run some of the, you know, Bilad al-Sham. Britain had occupied and run Yemen, South Yemen. So Adeni culture has a lot of British influence. It has a lot of Indian influence culturally, because it was an Indian British colony. There was a major port there. And so they did a lot of like transactions between the port and India. So you also have a lot of Indian influence, and a lot of Adeni people have Indian roots. So it's common to have Adeni Yemenis with the last names of like Khan, who, you know, which is an Indian name, you know, and like practicing those traditions. The Adeni music, there's a lot of Indian influence to it. So it's kind of, when you really, really reflect, history has a lot to do with the culture. It has a lot to do with the language. It has a lot to do with the dialects of different areas, but it's not a bad thing, right? It's something to be appreciated. It's something to be embraced. It's something to be loved, right? And so that's what makes makes the world so beautiful. It's all of these different shades and colors. And I'm not even talking about color, skin. I'm talking about in food, right? In dialect, and all of these things. And, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, we've created you nations and tribes so that you know one another, right? And with knowing, we know that knowing is tied to love, right? From a Muslim perspective. And again, I know not all of viewers are Muslim, but to love someone is to know them, right? So within the context of that verse, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we've created you different nations and tribes to know one another, you could kind of also understand it as to also love or embrace that diversity, right? And to appreciate the differences, right? And so I just wanted to bring that, connection between what your father said, which, Allah yarhamah, was such a genius comment, right? Especially back in that time when people weren't talking about race as much as we are now. And you know what? I remember him. He was a principal when I was in middle school, and Allah yarhamah, he was a great testament of that. He was Lebanese, but we always felt like he really loved us, and we never felt like he was another, right? We always felt like he was our hero. He was like our additional parent. He was our educator. He was our advocate. And I think it goes back to that quote that you shared, that he really recognized the beauty of diversity, recognizing it, not denying or dismissing it and saying I'm colorblind, right, but actually appreciating the value of it.
Yeah. Thank you, Maali. Thank you all so much. We have a few more questions, so we can move on with these, and maybe let's have like two people on the panel respond to the next few so we can get to all of them. So this one is, what is the best thing that other Arabs can do when they see or hear anti-Yemeni sentiment around them in a store or at a friend's house or wherever?
I can start with this one, Rima, because I come from a business background, and I owned a staffing agency, so I had to like work with all kind of people and all color people. And so as a business owner, there's three moral principles that you need to understand. Every business owner needs to understand this. It has nothing to do with business planning or anything like that or marketing. It's just as a business owner that you need to know. So if this situation happened, the first thing that you need to do as a business owner is to protect your customers. And what I mean protect your customers is by discrimination, whether it's like sex, religion, color. If you're doing like anything with housing, it's like fair housing, fair lending, boycotting, redlining, and all of these are laws, and I can go on and on. Number two is like fair competition, and number three is taxation. So the point that I'm trying to make, if this incident did happen at your store, you do need to like stand up and say something about it. Don't allow this to happen at your business. And if you are the business owner and you witness this, somebody else witness this with a business owner, you need to stand up and say something, because it's not fair to other people. I know that as a business owner, it took you a lot of courage and it took you a lot of money and effort to make this business work, but you have to be able to work with everybody. Otherwise, you shouldn't be in business. And that's why it's called business. Business is networking. Networking is working with other people. So if you can't do that, you shouldn't be in business. Yeah. Thanks.
So, Senan, it's awesome, man.
Thank you.
Something about this is that, so seeing the anti-Yemeni sentiment, honestly, me being very, very blunt, is I would shut it down immediately, right? Don't accept it. We have a good friend. Her name is Khadija Muhammad. May Allah bless her. She's from the Sudani community, right? And a couple months ago, she was starting this thing. I'm not sure if many of you guys know her. Her name is Khadija Muhammad. She does spoken word. Like, check out her page. But one thing that really, really stood out to me is when talking about the African American community, she completely put an X on the word abid. And I hate the fact that I just said that word right now, right? Just that word, it's a derogatory term towards our Black brothers and sisters in the Islamic community, right? The reason why I even bring this in here is this is not to like compare struggle to struggle, is that the second you hear an anti-Yemeni like sentiment, shut it down immediately, right? Mm-hmm. Just abid means, I'm thinking Amira, abid means slave, right? And wa'abid in that term was calling the black, and forgive me, I do not like, I hate that I'm saying this, and I hate that I'm translating this. But wa'abid would mean is calling the black brothers and sisters a slave. When if we were supposed to use that word as I would say it's ibadallah, because we are all slaves of God, and that term should never exist. But like I said, the reason why I even use that example is because the second you hear it, like I always tell friends and family from moving forward, the second we hear that term, or even any anti-Yemeni sentiment, it's shut it down completely. Like, I don't care if it's your mother, I don't care if it's your father, I don't care if it's your grandmother, I don't care if it's a cat. Like, if they say it, shut it down, right? Al-haq, al-haq, al-batil, al-batil. The right is the right, the wrong is wrong, no matter who you are. You can be my brother for all I care. If you use those terms, I'm gonna strongly tell you how I feel. Obviously do it with respect, and do it with love and care. Just there's no shame in saying it. And honestly, I'd love for we haven't heard from Amira and Mr. Ahmed in a while, so if I would love to hear what they have to say about this as well, if that's okay with you, Rima.
Yeah, of course. Well, of course.
Yeah, I would like to add a couple of things regarding one of the comment that said the Yemeni did not like Shia. The issue of Shia and Sunnah is centuries and centuries old. So to basically get involved in this is just to create more and more barriers and misunderstanding. The issue of Shia and Sunnah, or dealing with different sects, has a place with the expertise. The people who are experts, they can debate things, they can come up with conclusion. It should not be an issue among the ordinary people, because what happened is just create more and instigate more and more hate and more misunderstanding. Now, the other issue is, how do we tackle these phenomena in our communities? I believe many of the presenters spoke about education. Absolutely, education is key to it. It's more effective than any other methods, but it also goes in families, community leaders, organizations, religious institutions. This should, we should have an awareness about this. I'm talking about, if you are a teacher in the classroom, you can make an awareness day about racism, what it is, how it affects people. And then if you are imam in a masjid, you should do the same thing. If we are in a community circles with the families, like anybody mentioning this, you have to address that, and you have to make sure this is not appropriate. The other issue was mentioned is the identity crisis that we are suffering. I mean, this is among a lot of young people. They seems to be struggling with identity crisis. They don't want to be imitating this group or that group, or they're not comfortable in their own skins. I think that's because we do not have what they call the character educations. We need to emphasize an identity and what it is and why it's important for us in this time of age and in this particular geographic area we live in. Otherwise, the damage will be very severe to the young people. They just keep bouncing from one thing to another's. One day they're 100% Yemenis or Lebanese. The other day they are, imitating another different groups. So it is very important that we build character with our youth from the get-go, to tell them the right things. And this is part of trying to dispel these misconceptions and and bad perceptions among us. And also, as a culture, we are not used to reevaluate and reflect on our life, on our behavior, our friendship, our relationship. Everything is aib, everything is hush hush, people are going to laugh at us, people are going to make fun of us, and this type of things has no place in this age. We really have, you look at it across the board. Teacher being evaluated, company evaluated their employees. The only places they're not evaluated is some of this organization or some of those religious institutions. But everything has to be re-evaluated and re-corrected and redirected and empowered. So we really need to empower our young people to have the courage you all have. You came up and you face the issue and you discuss it and you are willing to follow up with it and to take action to correct it. And I'm so grateful. I have learned a great deal from what you guys said. It is very fruitful. I'm much better informed about the ideas, about the analysis that you made, the comment. So I'm looking forward to see some of the newspapers, the local newspapers and the masajid and the organization to follow up and do some of these things to dispel this type of misunderstanding. We are here, minority within minority within minority within minorities. I mean, that's just can go on and on. That makes it very, very difficult and hard to navigate and to really carry all this luggage on us, Mm-hmm. So thank you, and I really enjoy participating. And may Allah bless you all and give you the courage and make you the role model for all our young men and young women in the community. And I am so grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I live until I see these things I was dreaming about. So what I see today, the reality today is the dream of yesterday. And your dream today, all of you, will be the reality of tomorrow.
I'm so happy.
Thank you.
I'm so happy.
I just want to say, wallah, that brought us here tonight. Abdul Galil, thank you so much for being a trailblazer. Alhamdulillah for your existence.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was amazing.
You're thanking us. I can't even, I feel like I can't accept it because the whole time you're talking, I just feel so thankful to have you here and your perspective.
I'm so glad he was able to join the panel because it's such a great testimony just to hear that he's been doing. And Mr. Ahmed, I'm surprised you didn't tell everybody that you've been having this dream since 1972. And that we're finally able to do this. It's so great knowing that there have been these forefronts for generations and generations. And I've personally worked with you through AYSP and YABA and all of these other organizations. So for me, just to see your face reoccurring through all of these years, it's just a very monumental thing.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Forgive me, in the beginning, I have difficulties with the technology.
Okay.
I struggle a little bit until I got on the Zoom. So that's something I'm learning. I'm trying to catch up with you guys.
I thought you were trying to show us your dinner. That's what I thought. So you brought up an excellent point, and that's why I switched the slide, is you were talking about holding our local platforms accountable. And so that was actually a question somebody asked, is what role would you like to see Dearborn platforms play to bring awareness to anti-Yemeni sentiment? And how should they work to dismantle the systemic anti-Yemeni sentiment in Dearborn? And they included several of these platforms, Dearborn Press and Guide, our elected officials, TCD. I think One Dearborn is actually watching this today, so that's awesome. Dearborn Public Schools, Arab American News, and many, many more who have platforms. So whoever wants to take this, I actually think Amira, because we haven't heard your voice enough, and just lead the way. How should these platforms be handling this discussions?
So I want to say that, this ties in with how can we undo some of this harm? And I think it's been mentioned multiple times about the decolonizing that needs to happen for all of us. And I started a statewide decolonizing collective for teachers who want to start this work in their classroom. And one of the teachers who joined the group said, we need to decolonize ourselves before we can decolonize others.
Can you explain what decolonize means? I know I wouldn't have understood it a few years ago.
Thank you so much for asking for the definition. So decolonizing, this idea that we've been colonized, right? There is a predominant Eurocentric, let's just say white, prioritization of experiences in the world. And this is international, right? You can see this everywhere. The preference for lighter skin, blonde hair, blue eyes, and this kid, you can see it in literature. You see it in, you know, literature from the 1500s. So that's what we have to decolonize, unprocess those sentiments. And I think in schools, so I'm calling out Dearborn Public Schools, and I read 0 Yemeni works in Dearborn Public Schools. And even to this day, I really can't recall like how many resources, what are we talking about? And this goes for all of us. All of us who are not white need to decolonize ourselves, and even those who are white, to recognize that power that you're born into, that default status that we kind of like project onto everything. And I started doing a lot of this work, I'd say about a year ago, on myself. I need to educate myself about my own history because I didn't get it through our public school system. So, you know, when Monk of Mocha came out, which is about the coffee trade, it's an actual book like that. You should check it out. It'll teach you a lot about my country. I learned so much about my country reading that book. I learned about the fact that our people came from nobility. Our people came from, we are the salt of the earth. And I learned about Cesar Chavez honoring Nagi Deif Allah, who was a labor organizer with the farming workers in California, who was assassinated. I think he wasn't even 25 years old, and he was killed. And they honored him, like Cesar Chavez actually carried his coffin in the march. So, you know, when I started the school week today with my students, I put up 5 pictures. I put up Malcolm X, I put up Shirley Chisholm, I put up ML Clooney, Tawakkul Karman, and I put up Nagy. And I said, do any of you know any of these people? Mind you, I'm teaching Yemenis, African Americans, white kids, Lebanese. None of them knew any of these people. None of them, not even Malcolm X, who I think is pretty famous. And this is a disservice to our students, and just the importance of our history. This is why, like, I keep reflecting on Hajj Ahmed. I don't know if you're a Haji, but I'm going to call you that. Being on this call, like, we have to respect the trail that these people have laid. And Sally Howell wrote a great book called Old Islam in Detroit. And it goes back on Islam and how we got here to Dearborn today, 2020, you know. It's a great book to read. And I became fascinated with history and the importance that history does to your identity and your confidence. And I remember one day sitting down at dinner with my mom, and we had like 5 cups for 5 people at the dinner table. But I remembered growing up, we only, first of all, Yemenis, I'm not ashamed to say it, we ate on the floor, we ate with our hands. But we always had 1 cup, and there was like 11 of us living in the house at that time. We had 1 cup that we all drank water from. And I asked my mom, I said, you know, growing up, we only had 1 cup at the floor. We weren't poor enough to not afford cups. And I asked her why. She's like, are you kidding me? In Yemen, we didn't even have cups. We had to have a bucket next to us that we drank with our hands. So this idea of resourcefulness, so asking about that 1 cup, why did we have it? That taught me about my mother's struggle growing up, about how we have to honor where we have come from, each and every one of us. And this divisiveness is making us weaker. I believe, like, outsiders love to see this divisiveness because we'll never be a voting bloc. We'll never change city council. And I'm going to pause there. I'm going to get fired up, but you guys can contact me anytime. We can continue this discussion. This is just the beginning.
Right. I just want to go off of that because there have been people that did personally reach out to me, and they asked me like how can we represent the Yemeni better in the community? And I was just like, just ask us we just want to be involved. And I was City of Dearborn, I actually called them out when this whole situation with Bliss was going around, and I literally said, this is a story that needs to be said on the city of Dearborn, and it's not, no light has been shed on it. And through that situation, we were able to grow a relationship to build on a better Dearborn. So for example, city of Dearborn, I was able to like get a few Yemeni people in the community and reach out to that platform, and then they were able to have a better understanding. So these are good steps that Dearborn is doing. So I mean, and everybody is gonna have their own you know, thing about platforms and stuff like that, and that's okay, but to know that there's room to grow means everything to me. And just moving forward with that, I think we need to have better standards, or we need to hold them accountable, like more accountable to these kind of stuff. So I will not stop. I will not, if I feel like city of Dearborn has to post something, or if any news outlet has to post something, I will do that. As a person on my personal page, I will continue to do that. And I don't want anybody to feel like they don't have that power too. It's your voice. You are as loud as you need to be.
Thank you.
So I want to say something. So we want to tie into different things. So one thing about Amira said about sharing the cup, I love that. I love the analogy, just because, and you know, Rima, this is a question you asked me earlier, kind of tying the two together.
Right.
Was kind of understanding that culture, right? Who the Yemeni people are, who we came from, the type of people we were, right? You know, like we eat out of clay pots, right? It's because that's what we had. That was the resources we had, right? And we went to Yemen in 2007, and we've seen the lifestyle, you know, the lifestyle they lived, right? And for us, we thought it was kind of different, and maybe we thought it was not the norm. Like, you know, we don't eat out of clay pots here in America. We don't eat out of clay pots in Dearborn, Michigan. But I'll tell you this: when we make mahsuba, when we make like qamata, certain Yemeni traditional food, we eat out of clay pot, just because
it enhances the flavor.
It has a flavor. It has a lot to it, right? And you know, kind of like, you know, kind of adding on to what I was saying about understanding the culture is like also understand. I'm gonna throw in a little bit of spirituality in here as well. Is understanding what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said about the Yemeni people, right? He said, "Al-iman yamaniyah wal hikmah yamaniyah," right? The faith is for the people of Yemen, and the wisdom are from the people of Yemen, right? That alone is as well. You know, there's tons of different like ahadith about different types of people, etc., right? Like Bilal ibn Rabah, he was a great companion. He was from the African origins, right? And he's guaranteed paradise. I can go on and on. This is kind of my forte, but the reason why I bring this up is just understand. You know, there's a little bit of history to be told. There's a little bit of culture, and there's a little bit of spirituality, right? Super cool is when we look at the Kaaba, right? The Kaaba is this. Every Muslim knows what the Kaaba is. Every non-Muslim knows what the Kaaba is, right? People now use the saying, "Oh, Dearborn is the Mecca of Arab food." I don't know, Texas is the Mecca of barbecue, whatever the case may be. Basically, it's now becoming an analogy, right? But on the Kaaba, there's something called al-Rukn al-Yamaniyah, right? The corner of Yemen. Like Yemeni people, talking to my Yemeni people right now, is take pride in that. Our Prophet called us. It's us. We have a special corner to the people of for the people of Yemen, right? So I mean, like I love the fact that you kind of tied into you tied some culture into that, as well as like some what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's just like our usid, our original, what we're OGs for, right? And the last thing I want to say, I promise, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Last thing I want to say is there was one of the little things on the Q&A, someone mentioned about, oh, my dad never hires Yemeni people. I want to throw the opposite. I want to be optimistic in this post, right? I know Yemeni people who have been working minimum wage jobs for 10 to like 20 years. My first job in high school, I worked at UBC. It was a warehouse, right? The owners of UBC, they were Lebanese people. The beauty, what they did is they brought in those Yemeni people, right? They brought in people who, you know, didn't read and write English, right? They didn't read and write English, but they provided them a job, right? And I walked into UBC last month or a couple months ago just to say what's up to, like, I remember I'm 21 now. I worked there when I was 17, right? So it's been what, 3-4 years. And I still see those people, right? And it shows that, I'll tell you, if you're a Lebanese business owner, if you're a Palestinian, Senan can justify this too, is hire Yemenis. Why? Is because they know the life they left behind, especially the immigrants that are coming today, the last few years, right? We know that Yemen is facing the world's largest humanitarian crisis, right? And wallah, with every like oomph in my body, I know that a Yemeni in Yemen right now would want to come here and work a $10 to get paid $10 an hour, right? Because they know that living here is truly is a blessing, right? So for that remark of, oh, my dad won't hire Yemenis, whatever, I'm sorry, but your dad's business can be so much better if he did. If he just brought in a couple Yemenis, because I know they'll put in the hours, they'll put in the sweat, they'll put in the work, and guess what? They'll do it the next day and the next day and the next day.
Yeah.
And that's, yep.
No, I agree, Issa, you're right. Sorry,
I want to
Go ahead.
highlight something, because I think I want to make sure that people who are listening understand that we're not doing anybody any favors. Like, this is the city, and I think this goes to this question and back to one of the earlier submissions around Abdullah Hamoud. And Abdullah is a good friend of mine. I love Abdullah. Abdullah representing Yemenis is him doing his job. He's not, don't rabba hajmile, you know? And so I think to that point of hire Yemenis, not because we're trying to rabba hajmile or do anyone favors, but because that's the right thing to do. And so I really want to push this question a little bit more. Amira, you're getting fired up, so I'm going to send it to you in a second. But I think these platforms brand themselves with Dearborn, and in doing that, or brand themselves with Arab. In doing that, it's a unspoken commitment to representing the constituents of that community. And I know you spoke to Dearborn Public Schools. I really hope that, you know, this video gets into the hands of educators, into the school board, and really takes it seriously. But even our media companies, TCD, like we mentioned earlier, One Dearborn, Arab American News, what is their obligation right now and moving forward?
I mean, I honestly would rather give that to somebody who has an opinion. I find a lot of these platforms highly problematic. And I've said this before in other contexts, that the institutions of power within Dearborn are disproportionately white. Mm-hmm. They're not, the demographics have changed so much in Dearborn. And I can speak to like this Dearborn school board. To my knowledge, Adil is the first Yemeni to be not even elected, but appointed to the seat. Am I right?
Right.
So
yeah.
Maali is going to be the first hijabi Yemeni on the school board in 2020. We should not be afraid of that representation. When we have diversity in these institutions of power, we're better able to work together. We're better able to empathize and understand the deep nuanced problems we all come to the table with. So I'm saying, like, all of these Dearborn Press and Guide elected officials, TCD, One Dearborn, like all of these, Yemeni American, I mean, so many of them are so problematic. It's like TMZ, the car crashes, like whatever gets me the views. Propaganda is like a phrase I heard thrown around about TCD. It's like, no, have some integrity. Post things that are going to make the city better. And talk about divisiveness. This is work that we're doing right here to like build up ourselves. This would do better. That's what I'm going to say.
So a lot of people will probably hear this and feel defensive. I just want to take us back to the first several minutes. This is not about like us calling someone out. If you see it that way, honestly, you're part of the problem. This is us. These are your constituents, anyone listed here, telling you how they're experiencing your platform. And as people who are leaders of it, I've taken the same exact criticism. Anyone who claims to, you know, represent a group of people needs to actually represent them. Like, that's an active verb. It's not just a claim that we get to make.
Said, Rima, like just showing the active representation will start somewhere. There's no representation and there's no representation. So that in itself people need to say, okay, we understand it, we recognize it, now let's start doing better. Let's start like internally working on ourselves. But that's a conversation that they need to have. And like we all said, for whatever reason, just like how people were already telling me that these stuff didn't happen to you, stop lying. We need to tell these people these stuff do exist. you stop lying.
Mm-hmm. So I know we're over time, and I'm just gonna say that's okay. We're just gonna go till this needs to go. If anyone on the panel, I promised you guys 8:30, so if you have to leave, thank you so much for being here. If you want to stick around, you're welcome. But I want to,
let's go over it. Yeah, I was just gonna say, let's go over the.
So I think Amira talked about this a little bit. I know Maali obviously has a very unique perspective, given she will be on school board and this will be her job. And so I want to kind of point this to you, and I want you to talk about how our school board and school leaders we can hold them accountable to educating staff on anti-Yemeni sentiment. That's very clearly in our submissions. I want to say 30% plus of our anonymous submissions spoke to anti-Yemeni hate speech, bullying, ridiculing in the schools by teachers, students, other staff. And so how can we equip people with the tools and hold these systems accountable to stop this bullying?
So there are so many different strategies. Obviously, like, cultural sensitivity training for teachers and things of that sort. But I know when I was growing up, my mom was really active in the South End community. She was a parent liaison in Salina School. And so she was always a really strong voice of representation for the people in our community, and the Yemeni voice and the Arab voice all together. And so when we were younger, she would organize like cultural awareness events within the school, to demonstrate Arab pride, whatever culture I identified with. And so I remember like assemblies where we would organize as kids, like dance shows, food shows, whatever it may be, to kind of, showcase our culture, right? And, it was great in bringing awareness to the school, but when you think about it, Salina is now predominantly Yemeni, right? So events like that too, but spreading them across the district, help the kids learn, not just about the Yemeni culture, but learn from each other's cultures, right? And so like you said, representing your constituents, yeah, I understand Dearborn is not 100% Yemeni, right? So it's a representation of the Yemeni community, the Lebanese, the Iraqi, whoever it is in our community altogether. The reason we're emphasizing the Yemeni community right now is kind of like the Black Lives Matter movement, right? All lives don't matter until the ones that currently don't do, right? So in order for you to really fulfill that goal of making sure everyone is included and everyone matters, you need to uplift the ones that are at the bottom right now. And the ones that are at the bottom are the ones that are being oppressed or being marginalized or being discriminated against, right? And so creating more cultural awareness events. For example, Qahwa House is like a hot spot in Dearborn right now. Everyone's raving about it, right? That's the Yemeni owned business. Right. Coffee in general, and this is like an internationally appreciated, drink, originated in Yemen, right? So these are things that like we don't get to take pride in, right? And we should be able to take pride in. And people should, have that sense of respect of, wow, like this culture has contributed this to society. So back to the question, I don't want to derail too much, but about like school board and bringing in, definitely addressing those issues. If you have educators that are making comments that are literally building the entire cultural classroom environment at the expense of Yemeni students, right? So every day a student has to come in and hear a backhanded joke or, comments about their culture. That's a problem. That needs to be addressed right away. Well, definitely like bringing those issues to the forefront and actually taking action. It's unacceptable for kids to grow up in a school where they feel less, where they're bullied. And when you have it coming from your teachers or administrators, that's a bigger problem. So yeah, I don't want to like go off too much, but.
Yeah, that was great.
Oh, just to go off of what Maali said, the Qahwa House is having an event on September 17th that I'm part of that organization we're trying to combine or trying to unify the community. So there is going to be a Lebanese and Yemeni event that is happening September 17th at the Qahwa House. And it's just to show more unity into the community rather than to derive from it. So that's just something fun.
I just want one more with Qahwa House too. Like if you're one of those individuals, right? I don't care what your ethnicity is, and you are like putting Yemenis down, for example, or anyone else for that matter, yeah, you're at Qahwa House every day having their coffee.
Mm-hmm.
You need to check yourself. I personally was there having coffee with a group of people before. People who have a lot of influence in the community, right? And I don't want to cause more divisiveness, so I'm not going to get into too much detail. And I was just completely dumbfounded at some of the comments they made when I had been invited to join, you know, their group coffee. And someone literally said, "I'm sorry, I just hate Yemeni food. Ugh, I just can't stand it." And I was just surprised because it's like Yemeni food is so diverse, right? So it's kind of like, what exactly do you hate? What do you not hate? And but at the same time, it's like you're literally in a Yemeni restaurant having Yemeni coffee and whatever, you know, the treats are. And I was just so taken aback, right? So it's one of those things too, where it's like you really need to check your implicit bias and check what you've internalized, because it might not be
Right.
actually appreciate something of a different culture, not even realize you appreciate it, right? Kind of like a cultural appropriation, right? You're benefiting off of it, yet you want to sit there and put down the culture. So you need to be aware of that, regardless of whatever your ethnicity is and to whoever it's directed at. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you. I love that. That's such a good point.
I do too. Thank you, Maali.
All right, guys, I'm gonna say one last thing before I get out of here. I gotta start hitting the books again. But you know, for the like, I am able to learn from everyone here. So from Rima to hosting us, to Amira, Senan, Mr. Ahmed, Shayma, Maali, all you guys, thank you so much. I'm humbled and honored that I'm able to be with here and learn from you guys. And hope that the skills you guys taught us we can, you know, address in our futures. But for, you know, the youth, for the people who I can relate with, for my high schoolers that are watching this, college students that are watching this, right? The one thing that I'll always stand for is, number one, is humanity, right? Like I said, I don't care who you are, don't care what you are. If you're a human, you're good enough for me, right? We're always gonna fight. You're always gonna fight for your rights. And then to the Yemenis, to the Yemeni community, is own it, love it, learn it, live it, love it, right? You were talking about coffee, like everyone drinks coffee, right? Or at least a lot of people do, right? It's just like, there's so much beauty in like just how coffee brought us together, right? And kind of going back to like what I was talking about Amira about, like bringing in the culture, is how humbling and how humbling and resourceful the Yemeni community can be, right? So if I'm not mistaken, my pops drinks it all the time. There's a type of coffee called the qashir, right? And it's literally a lighter version of coffee. And what's it made out of is the outer shell of the coffee bean, right? And it shows you that like how it shows you that how resourceful and how like humbling that Yemeni people can be. Even they're not throwing something as small as the outer shell of a coffee bean, right? They're using that to be resourceful, right? And there's love and pride to take in that, right? You know, throughout, if I'm not mistaken, I know like throughout forever, like throughout history, the Yemeni community was always looked poor or looked always down upon, right? And sure, if that's the case, you know, like, you know, maybe we don't have as much money as whatever the case may be, but that doesn't mean I am less, like, or it doesn't mean that they're less blessed, if that makes sense, right? I can ask, I'm not sure, have Rima, for example, have you ever tried qashir?
No.
It's something, it's like a lighter version of coffee, right? It's something, hit up Qahwa House, I'm sure they have it there. But it's like stuff like that just makes you appreciate life a little bit more, you know? Like Dearborn, we live in a bubble here in Dearborn. We really do. Like we have for the most of us, it's so easy for me to go get bread, you know what I mean? It's just like, sometimes we need to like humble ourselves, right? It's just like kind of take a step backwards and humble yourself, right? Like, alhamdulillah, we're blessed that, you know, maybe your parents supplied a lot for you, or maybe, you know, you didn't really have to struggle, right? And you know, I didn't growing up, I never struggled for food. There was always a roof above our head, and for that I thank my father and my mother, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, for them, right? But there's times where, like, you know, it's just like, hey, remember where you're coming from, right? And remember that, like, things can be worse. And I don't want to make this really like sentimental, but like basically the last thing I'm gonna end with is, for my Yemeni community, is just take pride in who you are. Learn your culture, love your culture and apply it. And if you know what, if people ask you how do you eat asid, I get up, I get down on one knee, and I use my fingers, right? Like, take pride in it. There's so much beauty and joy. Rima, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.
The squad, we'll see you guys. Senan, Maali, Shayma, I'll see you in like 3 minutes. Amira, Mr. Ahmed, Yasmin, thank you guys all so much. Barakallah feekum, man.
Thank you, Issa. Thank you for
here's to a
doing
better
this. I
day,
really
Allah.
appreciate you.
We
Here's to
so
a better day.
appreciate you.
Absolutely. It was good seeing you. Take care.
Wow.
While we still have the rest of the panel, Rima, was that the last question, or did we have one more?
There's two more. So there's this one, which I think we can hit on now. So in addition to taking my money to Yemeni-owned businesses and calling out racist Lebanese relatives when they're racist, sorry, I can't read the whole slide. What more can I do to support the Yemeni community in Dearborn?
I can jump on that one, I guess, unless somebody else wanted to go first.
Go ahead, Maali.
It's just honestly, like, this is gonna sound so tacky, but love, like, honestly, love and respect.
Yeah.
It's really that simple, right? The same, if you were to ask the same question and replace Yemeni or Lebanese in that question and replace it with any other ethnicity, with you know, African American, with white, with whatever it may be, how would you answer that to yourself? It's really just basic human decency and respect, right? So when you hear making a racist comment, you know, call it out. People don't have, you know, that in them, but just be like, that's messed up. That's not right. You know, like, that's not, you shouldn't stereotype. You know, pull yourself away from people that think that way. It's very toxic thinking, right? Again, it's not just exclusive to Yemenis, right? It's to anybody, anyone that thinks that way, anyone that dehumanizes someone because they want to put them down by labeling them or stereotyping them. That's just toxic and very small-minded thinking. You're going to isolate yourself to a tiny, small, dark world. You want to grow, right? So pull yourself out of that. You know, don't be surrounded by that. And then I know with family it's a little different, right? Sometimes you have elders in your family, you have parents or grandparents that might be a little bit harder to change, but there are ways where you can kind of try to, like, remedy that, right? You just have to really care. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah, and it goes on honestly based off of, like, I know me and Issa when we were just talking about this whole situation, and one of the things that me and my brother we can both collectively, and I'm sure all of us can collectively agree on, is we're not going to take away of your human being, and we're not going to take away from that. This is not to highlight our differences, or this is not to highlight our similarities. This is to highlight that things do actually happen in the community, and that we all need to come together as a community and say that it's okay that this is happening. We just need to grow from it. Because I think it's really important to know that, just like love and to care for your Yemeni community. And it, like Maali said, it doesn't necessarily have to be just the Yemeni community. It's just to feel inclusive, just to be a part of something, and knowing that I truly belong here means the world to me.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine for the people that don't speak out for themselves. And so this is for the people. This is for the people that I'm doing it for the people that are not likely to speak out for themselves.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of again, a lot of the conversations around BLM, and the quote. I'm gonna forget who said it, but the idea that to end racism, I'm gonna butcher the quote. You don't have to just be non-racist. You have to be actively anti-racist. And so the metaphor that comes to mind for me is just this very fast-moving current that if you don't actively swim against it, it's gonna take you with it. And I don't say that to normalize racism, anti-Blackness, anti-Yemeni sentiment. It's not normal, but the reality is a lot of us in Dearborn are raised in a culture that has made it normalized, even though none of that should be normal. None of that should be, second nature. And so for those people who are non-Yemeni, specifically the Lebanese community, a lot of us are the perpetrators, not us as people. Again, I don't want to point fingers, but people from our community have been named as the people doing a lot of these bullying or these like negative things in the submissions. And even if you look within yourself and you're not actively saying negative things about Yemenis, even if you're a business owner and you are welcoming to your Yemeni constituents, the reality is that that's not enough. And what we need to be doing is actively resisting and doing things against this culture, because it's become such a dominant, toxic culture in the community. I want to take us to our last question. So why do you think Yemenis still go underrepresented in local government? How can we ensure our representation mirrors the demographics in Dearborn?
I can jump in on that topic real quick. It's a great question. Now, as we all know, this is an issue, and at the end of the day, the reason we're doing this, it's because we want to find a solution. And to do that, we need to get everybody involved. We need to get the Yemeni people involved, especially when it comes to elections. We need to, especially youth, get your parents involved when it comes to voting, teach them how to vote. Right now, myself and a couple of business owners are working on a project. Hopefully, we did this last year as a test and it worked. And I believe, Shayma, you were there. We did it in a small event where we had like Yemeni business owners or artists coming together and do something. And the reason for that, it's because we want to inspire. In that event, we did invite non-Yemenis, and we had a lot of people that came in that were non-Yemenis. So what we need to do is we need to get everybody involved. I'm personally, reaching out to business owners and Yemeni artists to come out and be an influence, and let people know, hey, this is what we do. And I think the reason that Yemenis are not recognized is because we don't show anything, like we have a lot of talent. It's hidden. So I think it's we need to play a huge part in our city or cities. And what I also need to add is teachers or educators, counselors, officials, election officials need to come out and get people involved and show them what's going on, so that way we can be recognized. So I think wake up call is something that we need to do as a group.
Just to go off on that, and I know, like, mashallah, the females that are in my life, they're very outspoken, and they're very commendable when it comes to with their voice. But I do feel like there is a misrepresentation for a lot of like Yemeniyats trying to like stand up for themselves. They're not really encouraged to do that, and I feel like if you do, or if you are wanting to like defend, or if you do want to stick up for something, you're kind of just you get like kind of like picked at for doing that. And it's just like, instead of finding the things to pick at for one another, we need to come collectively for a better tomorrow. And Senan, I loved how you mentioned that event, because that event had so much room to grow, and knowing that that is like something that you guys are working for is amazing. So more power to you guys.
Thank you, Shayma.
You're welcome. I'm looking forward to the event.
Yeah, I believe it or not, I actually lived in Florida, and I came all the way down from Florida. I drove 19 hours because we didn't have any flights, just to host a small event, just to bring it, Yemeni business owners and artists together just for Eid. And and I think that's the only way we can change. If we want change, we need to get everybody involved, whether you're a male or a female. Everybody needs to come out. It's 2020. Nobody should be embarrassed. Nobody, should be hitting anymore, especially if you have talent. If you're good at something, come out. And we need to share it with everybody else, whether it's Lebanese, Iraqis, black or white. So we need to, work together and do something together.
I agree. Rima, was that the last question, or was there one right after?
Yeah.
That was it?
Yep. And if people want to help me close, really, we just want to reiterate that this is a very small step, It might be new for a lot of people listening. This conversation has been happening of course, we have Mr. Ahmed here with us. We know this conversation has been happening And I just want to reiterate one thing, that to be able to wake up, a week ago or a week and a half ago and realize that this is an issue in itself is a privilege, because members of the Yemeni community have lived this issue. People have been experiencing this issue far before I was born. And for us to be able to wake up and open our eyes to this issue, or the gravity of it, I know myself, I've known this was an issue. I had no clue the sheer gravity and weight and the way that it was affecting people's day-to-day lives. And so even with that, I'm taking the same advice that I'm hoping we all can take heed to. And so we really want to talk through some next steps. And I just listed some of them based on conversations I've been having. Hold our elected officials accountable, like someone articulately put it in the anonymous submissions. This is their job. This is what we're paying them to do. Ensure equitable Yemeni representation on all local platforms. Urge the school board to re-examine curriculum, hiring practices, and anti-bullying campaigns. Continue engaging in these conversations at the grassroots level, in your group chats, in your home, in wherever it is that you hang out. If you hear a comment, be brave and say something.
Right.
Hold local businesses accountable for their discriminatory practices. We received several submissions naming businesses. Now, because I am afraid of legal ramifications, I'm not going to be naming those businesses. But honestly, if I wasn't afraid of legal ramifications, I would be, because I think we need to be holding businesses accountable, because enough is enough. And unfortunately, sometimes people need to be made an example of, and that's just the reality of it. And then last but not least, sorry, go ahead.
Just to reiterate that point, like a lot of people are getting really we're getting nitpicky and telling me that I was doing this for personal gain and doing it because I had a personal brand that I was trying to, and it's like, again, and I know Maali said this, Rima said this, Amira said this, and my brother said it. It's a bigger picture. If you guys can't see that bigger picture, then you are part of the problem. You really are.
Yep. I'm just gonna say this too, since you mentioned that. I'm gonna speak on behalf of myself. This hasn't been a great week. And I'm not saying that to complain, but for anyone accusing either of us or anyone on here of trying to instigate or trying to, gain clout, it's not a fun conversation. And I can imagine it's a way less fun conversation for someone who's part of the Yemeni community to have to address these issues. It's very anxiety inducing. It affects people's health. We both experienced tremendous bullying. And so I say this just to say that please don't minimize the importance of these problems and people's stories by saying this is a moment of glory. I'm quoting somebody that actually said that. And it's not a moment of glory at all. This is a moment of shame, if anything. And it's not even a moment, it's a period that is emblematic of what people have been experiencing for decades.
Right.
So I'm gonna stop there. I really wanna open it up for final comments and people urging next steps while we have people listening.
I'll just say this is just the beginning. I cannot stress that enough. This is deep work. I think this is it's not, sorry, I don't mean to say the beginning, because this work has been done, right? And now it's it's an opportunity to expand it very quickly. Connect with the Black Lives Matter movement. There's a group called Accountability for Dearborn. It's doing work to, uplift the historical racism within our city that still have ramifications and legacies living today within our school system, within our city council, within policies and practices that we are totally ignorant of. And I think that we need to continue talking to one another. Don't be defensive. I literally had a Christian look at me and say, because you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to go to hellfire. I was still able to have a conversation with that person. It's I don't take it personally. That's your belief. I don't think I'm going to hell. But, let's just come to the table with an open mind, open heart, and continue this work, not start it, continue it.
Amira, for people who think that your call to action around getting in touch with the BLM movement and accountability for Dearborn, for people who think that's irrelevant to this conversation, can you explain why it's very deeply relevant?
Yes, oppression is oppression, right? Martin Luther King said, a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And like, we don't need to go that far back to remember Arabs being the element that they wanted out of Dearborn. Mayor Gairo ran on a getting rid of the Arab problem platform.
Right.
So just because we have become a majority, you know, a voice in the city, and now it's like almost like the oppressed continue like oppressing another group, and now it's like African Americans within the city. The statistic that the Accountability for Dearborn shared was that African Americans make up 4% of Dearborn residents, but they make up 40% of arrests. That's disproportionality, and you don't have to go that far back to see that with Arabs. So let's connect with one another. None of this divisiveness. Injustice is injustice.
I think what I call him Khalu Ahmed Abdul Galil because I knew him when I was younger. What he said earlier, I know he's gone now, and he said something along the lines of it's satanic. Like it was so well said, because it's like Amira just said, it's something that you see with all of these different communities, and it's the same thing repeating itself just in a different form. Yeah. I did want to give an example based on what Rima had mentioned, some of the criticisms I believe she was getting. So I just want everyone to picture, like if you're a parent or you're a teacher or you're an adult, I want you to picture you have two kids. One of your children is always getting bullied by the other one. Constantly taking it, constantly getting bullied at home. Finally, the kid gets fed up, comes to you and says, Mom, Dad, you know, whatever. So-and-so is bullying me all the time. It hurts. I'm tired of it. I'm fed up. So you as a responsible adult that, you know, is responsible of protecting both of these kids equally, would you just be like, hey, let's not talk about it. It's going to break apart the family. It's going to make us all really, you know, divisive. Just, it's okay. Just, you know, just put up with it. It happens in other families, and just let's continue living our life the way it is. If that would be your reaction, that's a very unhealthy reaction, right? And I can guarantee your child's going to develop some long-term issues. The appropriate response for that adult would be to say, hey, let's sit down at the dinner table or wherever you have your family meetings, and let's talk about it with compassion, understanding, respect, sort it out. Why are you making these comments? Why are you bullying your sibling? Wouldn't it be better if we learned how to love and respect each other and really became the best version of our family that we can become? That would be the appropriate response, right? And I think most of us would agree. So people with platforms, so like yourself, Rima, with Dearborn Girl, people in elected positions, right? Because they have a strong following, influencers, right? These people kind of they inherit that obligation, that moral obligation to be that parent, so to say, of society, right? You need to use your platforms responsibly, right? And if you have that pull and that influence, then you have to step up to the plate and be that person that says, let's address these issues, because if we're not addressing them, then who's going to, right? And it was just kind of an analogy that came to mind, because I know people were being a little critical about why this conversation is even happening. And it should happen. It should happen in a healthy way, in a way that it's moderated. And this is pretty much what happened tonight. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Maali.
Thank you, Maali.
Yeah, I also want to thank you, you know, Rima, Shayma, and everybody, the Dearborn Girl group, our team, for taking the courage and standing up and, you know, with us and planning this out. This has been a great event. I had a great time, and I enjoyed everybody, you know, talking and giving their opinion. And hopefully, like I said, you know, the next step is everybody getting involved. Just like I mentioned, you know, we need our Yemeni people to get involved in, you know, in our cities, especially when it comes to elections, votings. So I hope, you know, that's what's going to happen next, and I'll do my best from my part to do whatever I can to help and work with both. I do work with all people. That's what I do. You know, that's my job. I work with Lebanese, Iraqis, Yemenis, black, white. And it's been a great experience so far. So this is amazing that we're doing this, and I look forward to the future, and I look forward to the better Dearborn. And thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, Senan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any closing statements, Shayma?
Just to reiterate, I just wanted to say that everything happens for a reason. And honestly, this situation or the incident that happened at Bliss was definitely a wake up call for us. And it definitely gave me the opportunity to say enough is enough. So I do believe that the best of people are the people that can accept their mistakes and work on a solution. So I'm trying to work on bettering the city. So I'm continuing to do that. And I want people to understand that this definitely was a conversation that needed to happen, but it doesn't end here. It's not like we're all going to close our laptop and then we're just stop talking about this. No, this is a conversation.
I'm calling you right after this. I hope you know that.
I was just going to say, Rima, I'm expecting you to call me right away. So yeah, man, you just threw me off with that one.
Sorry. I'm sorry. But I mean, to your point, yeah, first of all, thank you to the panelists. We've taken more time than we promised we would take. So thank you, thank you, thank you. This is truly stolen time because, again, we shouldn't have to be talking about this. Shayma, you're amazing. And I want to thank everybody who made it to this, made it this far, whether you're listening live, whether you're watching on the recording. Thank you, whether you got mad at certain points, whether you want to cuss me out in my DMs, whether
mine too, it's okay, Rima, we're a team.
Whether you're clapping, snapping, I don't care, because the fact that you're listening means that we're planting the right seeds for this conversation moving forward. I'm very sorry. I see 16 questions. We do not have time to get to them. All that means is you should copy paste that question into your notes section of your phone and re-engage with this conversation, because this is definitely just the beginning. And Yasmin and I have already had conversations of how we can continue to use our platform to amplify this much needed discussion. So if anyone has been inspired tonight and has ideas, please come to us or come to any of these people on this panel. I'm sure they'll be more than willing to help organize, because we need to get this conversation.
And Rima, I really want to piggyback off of that. These are every person that was on this panelist or that was on this panel are very safe people to talk to. And I know this because I had conversations with each and every single one of you. And so if you do feel like there's a situation or if there's something that you want to talk to somebody about and you just want the right ear to listen, reach out to one of us, guys. It's not something, you don't need to feel embarrassed. You don't need to feel some type of way. If you do have a concern, address it, and address it while you still have people behind you. Right, Miss Sahidi?
Thank you.
Yeah, like Shayma says, oh, sorry to interrupt you.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, like Shayma says, you guys can always reach out to me if you have any questions or anything like that. I'm more than happy to, or any assistant, if there's anything that you want to bring up or you think it's going to help, reach out to me and we definitely can do something together.
But Simon sold it.
Yes, that's my Instagram name. I did not want to say it because I didn't want anybody thinking I'm advertising. But
don't worry, I'm free advertising.
But the least we can give you in return for your time is advertising. Yeah. What is it? Simon sold it?
Yes, Simon sold it. That's my brand name is Simon, and you can also go to simonsaleh.com, and you can also reach out to me from there as well.
Thank you, Senan. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rima, I will hear from you soon.
Yes.
Yeah. Amira and Maali, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate you guys from the bottom of my heart. You guys will all both receive a text message from me, so just me commending you guys' beautifulness. So again, thank you guys so much. Inshallah, I'll see you guys soon. Rima?
I got you. I'm about to call you.
Bye, guys. Assalamu alaikum.